We bring out Bukster, firstly, a man that's got an awful lot to prove over the course of this weekend. Of course, he needs an opponent to face, and we do have Xron in the building, as these two will be duking it out over the course of a best-of-5 to see who will be walking away as victor. I'm not alone on the desk either, once again, joined by the beautiful ZSX and Ketchup. Guys, obviously, fresh off the back of the ridiculous result we just had versus CNZ and Sparty. We'll never forget that one, but we'll have to move on to something a bit different now. Bukster versus Xron. Initial opinions, what are you both thinking?
I mean, Bukster's a player that, like, especially in Quake Champions, he's a name that's always there in a decent part of the bracket. Like, no matter whether it's been, the 1v1's been a big aspect of it, but he's a player that is very familiar. But on, like, a grand setting, like a stage like this, he's not one you see as often. Like, this is a really big opportunity for him.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. He's been around for quite a long time. He's just not been able to make the transition to establish himself on the, I guess, that elite echelon of the other players. So it'd be really interesting to see how he does against Xron, because if there's anyone to pick in the pool that he could have got, I would have said his best chances would have been against Xron. And that's no disrespect to Xron, because Xron's an incredible player, but he's someone that just seems so temperamental, and particularly against players that perhaps he sees as lesser than himself. He doesn't always show up to the game. And this is a player that 2017 era back in QuakeCon, where people were citing Xron as potentially like the next big name in Duel, and he's just kind of plateaued. So for me, this is an amazing opportunity for both of them. I see this tournament could be the one where Xron really, again, takes the next step, but for Bukster, again, it's the perfect chance to leap into the elite.
Well, let's delve a little bit deeper into it, as we do have the veto, so I can see if that is going to potentially sway you a little bit, Dan, based on the actual champion picks that we have available.
I mean, I was pretty wrong last time, so I'm going to let...
It's true, I don't trust a thing you say, so I'm just all on Ryan, really.
Yeah, go.
But it's the classic case of the more we go down the ladder of the extra maps, we start to see Death Knight picked again, and we just start to see Keel gets picked again, your favorite, Dan.
My God.
Fundamentally, Xron, we talk about him in droves. It's confidence in himself is always the biggest decider. Anyone that's ever spoken to him, like, that's always the number one thing that's always brought up.
I'm a little bit worried here, because it looks like Xron got a lot of comfort picks. He loves playing Doom, and Doom on Awoken is probably the meta pick. Nyx on Blood Covenant, again, is the pick, and particularly against a Ranger, like that, you have to play perfectly as a Ranger. And I know Bukster loves Ranger on Blood Covenant, but you have to play absolutely spot on to overcome a Nyx. Keel versus Scalebearer on Veil. If there's a map to pick Keel, it's going to be a Veil. I think we saw Rafa pick it up and just absolutely dominate with it.
Like when Veil first came into the rotation.
Yeah. And that's going to be a matchup of brutes. Molten, I slightly favour the Strogan Peaker on there. I'm not sure about you, Ryan. Before Death Knight, for me, I just don't see the value.
We have not really seen, and in a long time, you know, there were days of players like Cooler that had Death Knight kind of in droves when Death Knight was a bit of a different champion damage-wise.
I think that's the point, right? It's not that champion anymore.
That's kind of what I'm getting at, is that when we do see Death Knight get picked in a competitive setting now, it doesn't do a whole lot. It's a very kind of like, you feel like he's quite a one-trick champion. Like, his plays, when it works, it can work really well, because you've got the area denial, you have the immediate burst damage, but it's movement I'm worried about, and he's getting slashed.
And Ruins as well. It's not a good map to pick on Ruins. There's not much area denial strategy to go on. There is placement, but as you say, Slash, that's one of the champions that you can really shine on Ruins. Like, we've seen Tox putting it out. I think we've seen Rafa a few times. And Xron back in the day was the person to almost push it into the mainstream meta.
See, that's the crazy bit, right? Is this is obviously now the second DK we're seeing just on the A stream throughout the tournament. Normally, it's very rare. We maybe see one or two, normally just picked by Rafa throughout the online stage. So it's crazy. Obviously, based on the fact we just have more maps available to us now, they need to push the boundaries of their hero pools. Seeing DK picks coming in, it's an iffy one. I believe, based off of this as well, it just looks like Xron really has won the pick and ban in terms of champions.
Yeah, 100% for me. There's a lot of comfort picks in there, and each of the matchups I would always favour, at least on paper, apart from potentially the Keel versus Scalber. I slightly favour Keel there. I would all generally favour the Xron picks for this one.
I mean, through matchups alone, if we go to a map 5, it's hard not to favour Xron, just through the matchup alone.
Yeah, but it's going to be tough. It's really tough road. Just for the picks, it's going to be an uphill battle.
Yeah, well, we do have to get to that 5th map, of course, and we have to start from the beginning. Based on what you've just seen, what are your opening feelers, Ryan? Where are you leaning?
I mean, it's hard not to agree with ZSX here when it comes to like the champions, that kind of every champion that Xron has picked will serve a good purpose. The one difference might be the Veil of Nath, purely on the basis of if you can set up a close range fight in a room where you can't escape. We've seen Scalebearer work in some great situations, but it's kind of tricky sometimes to build up that speed. There's loads of corridors, there's lots of like verticality to that map. So depending on
the one thing about that particular matchup is the Keel is obviously amazing on that matchup because you can use the grenades super effectively in those close quarters. There's lots of corridors like around the Mega. It just creates such chaos. But then you've got the Scalebearer, which has the additional stack advantage to make the grenades not as effective as going up against a lighter or medium champion. So it kind of balances a little bit in that aspect. It might be why Xron picked it, because as you rightly said, there isn't really any good charge path or anything like that. Yes, you can potentially get away, but it's more for just the overall stack, I think.
The one thing to think about, though, is that Xron is one of the best Scalebearer players out there, period. You know, even when Scalebearer wasn't really considered crazy meta, Xron was championing that champion.
Work.
Any map in the pool, apart, like, I think that's the one map I wouldn't know how to play it on, on paper. So I'm really interested to see what Xron does. But for me, if we go back to predictions, I'm going to say Xron up 2-0. Then we'll see a little bit of stuff going on. So maybe 3-1.
It looks like we're ready to kick it off. I'm going to leave it in your very capable hands. Let's get underway with Bukster versus Xron.
I mean, once again, we have to remind everyone that may have just tuned in. This is a relegation match. Bukster came in from Challengers, and Xron, unfortunately, was on the chopping block from Pro League. Whoever wins this best of 5 will go into stage 3.
Nice rocket off the bat from Xron. And we do know Xron as one of the more tactful players. He pulls out some quite innovative strategy, very aware, but also sound mechanics. So Bukster's going to have a big fight on his hands. But be interested to see what Bukster does with the totems. We do see a pretty traditional totem place there, so maybe not using any of the crazy tactics that we've seen come out in earlier weeks of the QPL.
Yeah, this is Awoken. It's just a map where you can place them in such tricky little locations that are kind of hard to detect if you're not used to them. But right now, Bukster going with really traditional totems. Now, we talked about Xron and his confidence. The thing about it is, he may be a little bit inconsistent, but when he's on, he is extremely dangerous.
And that's why we were talking about earlier, right? That can he transition to make that consistency level come at a much higher base than it's been in previous events overall? Because if he does, like he's taken down, I think he took down Kilson in earlier weeks, and again, one of the only players to do it. So he's got the capacity. Can he make it come through?
Some initial damage there. Bukster really just trying to keep Xron as far away as possible as the Mega's just about to spawn. And that will activate the totem as well. Have to remember her passive. If she picks up health, it will take off cooldown similar to an hourglass. So
and it's vitally important you manage to get that 3 totems up. It's hugely beneficial if you can do that. Xron at the minute just playing a bit tactfully, feeling out Bukster, but Bukster again reciprocating, not pushing in or over-committing for the heavy. They're both lovely rocket rail combo. Xron needs to get out of there badly.
In the blink of an eye, it can all fall apart, but those defensive rockets from Xron just to keep Bukster from pushing in too hard actually worked wonders, because now Bukster, minimal options to go back and heal up. And then you combine that with the fact that Xron just got the Mega, it's just happy days.
I mean, and that's it, right? There was a perfect rocket rail combo from Bukster, but the defensive rockets means now Xron has complete control of the map, having picked up all major items back to back, and following that up with another heavy. Bukster just needs to play this corridor very carefully, very slowly. He needs to eke himself out for at least the light armor to try and get something back into his name.
Bukster's been fairly tender for quite a while here, to the point where even getting that light, you've got to be a little bit nervous, because if I'm a little bit weak and Xron has full control and I pick up this light and he hears it, well, he's going to turn around and get some of that free damage on me, but Heavy's just about to have its point here.
He's at a point now where he can try and at least do some chip damage for the Heavy. He has a rough idea of when it's going to spawn. Xron's doing a great idea of zoning out Bukster though, so cannot do anything. And there's such a long time between the Heavy and Mega that he can... Xron can bide his time to get over there, and he should be able to push it for a kill here.
Oh, the terrain just blocking the rail by an inch. Xron, he's been laying on some lovely pressure. He's been hitting some great rails. It's been keeping Bukster on the back foot. If there was no pillar there, that rail probably would have hit. Just bad little angle there. But
I do enjoy how he's biding his time though. There's no need so early on in the game to risk anything. Yes, there's potential for an easy kill, but if he comes away taking too much damage, then it's never worth it. So Xron just waiting for a clean opening, just maintaining good control, pushes in here, realizes there's 5 seconds to go and forces Bukster away.
And he really had to bank on getting damage off that jump pad at the same time. You know, if Bukster had that angle in that position and Ron missed anything there or didn't really get any damage, yeah, had a big play to make. It wasn't perfectly timed on the, right, I'm going to just use the jump pad and the Mega's going to be there immediately. There was a lot of confidence in that play. Nice rail, but he still needs a bit more because he's railable at 68 HP. And he's got to be real careful.
He's really living on the edge here at the minute. Like, he's hitting some great fadeaway rails and keeping just enough damage to mitigate Ron's advances, but the pressure is mounting and still not picking up any major items or even lights. He's in so much trouble against sneaking away. At some point in time, this is going to come to bait. Bukster needs to try and get something to his name, but Ron is doing a great job of just controlling the map and keeping enough pressure on.
Shot! Nice rail.
Bukster never feels safe to push in for anything.
We have seen a nice element of that just core matchup knowledge too. I mean, you'll notice the second Ron went around the corner, there was no kind of initial rocket because it's Doomslayer. You know he's going to double jump around that corner to avoid a rocket.
And that's such a valid point that we're already seeing the power of the Doomslayer coming into play where Bukster has to play around the outskirts of the map. And the Doomslayer is just using that double jump mechanic to get across the middle and capitalize on the Galena's limited movement capabilities. So it is a distinctive quality of this match so far.
Bukster opened up some fantastic damage with a 100, but he knows that Ron, he's going to retreat to Mega, so there's not really much we can do. Bukster is very weak. Ron has to be careful, turns around at the last second, and he's dangerous at this health.
He's fed up.
Yeah, that's the final play. And there's been a couple of moments where Bukster, he's been kind of holding a rail angle, and like that microsecond he swaps weapon and turns around is when Ron comes around the corner. Yeah. That was right before that fight happened. The exact same thing happened near Rocket again, about 3 minutes before it at the same time.
He's delaying the Mega, that's smart. I don't know if Bukster, unless he just hears it there, he might not have any idea when it's going to spawn. Plenty of time splitting off now. He's in a lot of trouble, trapped in that corner. He just needs to do as much damage as he can. He gets out, he's insanely lucky, but he's trapped, and Ron will take him very cleanly.
And that massive delay he's been able to put in between, with the fact that we're less than the 5-minute warning has surpassed. He's just in a position where if he can now run this circuit and just keep the cycle going with the control, it's going to be so hard for Bukster to mount any kind of comeback.
I mean, that's it, right? He's in a lot of trouble. What he needs to do is try and play the corners, bait Ron in a little bit, because yes, he's keeping alive, and yes, he's doing a decent job of preventing Ron's advances, but he's not doing enough on the map to stop those advances before they happen, right? So there needs to be a bit more emphasis on trying to get some presence on these major items. Even if it costs him his life, he needs to try and stabilize this map and take it back to when he's been killed. He's done a great job here. And this is what we mean, right? He was in position early enough to keep Ron away from that major item. He's picked up his first one in, what, like 4 minutes?
Gonna need a little bit more than that though. Thankfully with Galena, she can kind of just sit and hold at least one of them, and the totems can take care of the other area that you might be lacking.
Good rail. Oh, nice.
Combos. And there's an opening to go in, some absolutely fantastic defensive shots. Ron's accuracy in this map has been obnoxiously efficient. So many shots are doing
wow.
Yeah, you're not ready for how much damage you can just get deleted.
Game on.
My word. And just like that, he's back in it. You blink and he's back in the fight.
No, and it's kind of one of our common sayings is that if you keep the score close, you're always in with a chance.
This is the shot.
Even though he hasn't had a real presence on the map, the fact that it's only 2-0 until this point means he's now pretty much in line to tie it all up.
And Ron stuck in that tricky position.
I like this. Not committing, pushing back to pick up that red. He also has enough time to keep the pressure on to secure this Mega, and that's when we might see Bukster make his next big move.
It was safe too, because Ron went straight for the heavy. Almost a play that suggested, like, if you tried to chase me there and you didn't immediately get the double back, I was going to get the heavy before you.
Bukster's rail's been on point this game as well. It's been his saving grace in a lot of situations.
But with this control, Ron,
it's now Ron who we have to see. Does he have the fortitude to play defensive for the next 2 to 3 minutes?
I wonder if that's even possible with Bukster.
I mean, that's the thing, right? I would not expect, well, I would expect Bukster now to put on a bit more pressure. With 2 minutes to go, such a huge stack. He can't let Ron get on any of these items.
On a map that is as small and as kind of trap heavy as this one, you always have this feeling that you're going to get seen eventually.
And this is why we see Bukster
kind of like now.
Such a slow game because he doesn't have the capability to catch Ron, so he has to play small, and that's what he's done.
Catching the double jump though. LG for Ron.
How has he done so much damage?
But actually, I mean, the heavy's in play, but can Bukster even go for this?
Bukster has to.
Oh, wonderful totem. There was a totem. I completely missed that near the heavy. Not going to be as scary, but...
Fortunate spawn by Xron to get that rocket spawn, which means it's his last lifeline here. Otherwise, if Bukster got that heavy, it would have been big trouble for Xron, but Xron now also be able to back off to the Mega, and that all came about doing an insane amount of damage before dying.
You almost feel like Bukster's muscle memory took over there, where he's going to rail to get rail ammo and then swaps to the rail anyway. Like, you're just so used to having it ready. He tried to do the right thing, but he just did not have the ammo to get it working. And I mean, by no means is Bukster straight back in this fight. Like, it's a 2-2. He's done a fantastic job of kind of just clawing things back to make it 2-2, and it's been through very smart play. But now things might get a bit scary. Xron with a slightly better stack. Finally, some rail ammo comes in, but an unreturned rail and no armor. Xron likely has shut that one down. There is a light over there, but risky and maybe too predictable.
Yeah, and he's done enough now to just secure the map. He realizes he can back off, pick up both major items if he needs to, because Bukster hasn't got enough time to really restack to any comparable point to take a fight.
30 seconds on the clock until sudden death. I mean, this is going to be a single frag victory all the same. Yeah, we've reached that stage.
Trapped. This could be the fight.
This is that tricky situation. Xron, the confidence that says, you know what, I'm not even going to play this game. I'm going to force you to move.
I'm going to win.
And that's the confidence. That's the confidence coming out. And this should, by all means, just be another one. Bonus frag at the very end, but Xron playing it really well until the very end. Bukster definitely fought for it. By no means was that one-sided at all, but Xron, comfortable win in the end anyway.
It was, well, I wouldn't say it was comfortable.
I think at the last second when he had, like, with the second he got control of that map, like that one moment he got it, that was pretty much his map.
I think as we briefly touched on at the start, the story of that map was the power of the Doomslayer. I thought Bukster played probably a better game overall. I felt his movements, his traps were slightly better than Xron's, but ultimately he wasn't able to be as maneuverable. And that's what Xron did really well. He played the center of the map, whereas Bukster was just isolated on the outsides. And pretty much the one fight here, I think it was not on the replays, where Xron did an insane amount of damage without really having any right to just before he died. That kept him in the game, otherwise Bukster might have run away with it. Ultimately, it was a pretty good even level duel that sets us up pretty good for the rest of the series.
We talk about kind of the safety picks and how the picks from Xron have been really solid. That's somewhat foreshadowing. I know there was a Galena on the flip side, and that's another fantastic map for Galena is Awoken at the same time. But maybe a taste of things to come, just champions that play the map really well. If Xron plays just as well at the same time, it's just a dangerous combination.
But we also see, as strong as Galena is on that map, unless you're able to get the overstacking play, which I don't think he ever was, it's nowhere near as effective. So that was in part good play by Xron by keeping on top of the totems, in part slightly poorer play by Bukster by not using some of the more creative solutions.
I mean, Xron is the kind of player that leaves no stone unturned.
Yes.
We always talk about players that aren't afraid to kind of just sit in like a custom game for ages and just practice all this weird stuff that like maybe it's a weird angle, maybe it's a weird double jump that Nyx can get or something. Xron's the kind of player that will sit there and find it himself. He's a bit of a scientist in that regard.
I was impressed really with both of them was it was very strategical. There was no overcommitting. Xron always bided his time and made sure he valued positional advantage and control of the items over just pure aggression. And there were a few times where he could have potentially got the frag, but decided it wasn't going to be clean enough for him to warrant making that move. That nearly came back to bite him in the butt later in the game. But ultimately, that play did eventually make him win because he didn't throw away needless frags. He kept the control on the balance of the game in the play. So that's what they both strive to do. So in a way, they're playing quite similar.
Well, we're about to load into Blood Covenant. So he's going to have the upper hand here. Xron gets a close win after map 1.
This is going to be a much tougher ask with the Nyx on a Blood Covenant.
He has to play well, and Xron, we've seen many times before that there's that one play that you see the genius behind it, and it's really bold, but it doesn't quite work out, and it kind of just spells disaster for a long time afterwards. And Nyx is kind of really the seesaw effect of that, but some excellent rails and a cute double jump
twice
too.
Already, yeah.
And it set up an angle that Bukster might not have even been ready for.
Oh, there was no way Bukster would have realised that Xron had been up there already. But we're seeing the experience of Bukster on the Ranger coming out already. The fact that he prioritised getting that rail off the bat. He's in a lot of trouble though.
All confidence, this is an all or nothing play. Bukster can't retreat. The Ghost Walk from the shadows is right in that situation.
Yep.
But we've actually seen a kind of a perfect example in 45 seconds. We just touched on how Xron, he goes for these really like unusual jumps and some stuff that maybe not every player knows. And then he went for a big all or nothing play with the Ghost Walk. Like this is kind of like perfect Xron in 45 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, already we're seeing how powerful the use of the double jump with the nail gun boost is being. It's so unusual. I know it seems so simple, but it's not overly used in professional play. And as you rightly pointed out, it's caught Bukster off guard nearly 3 times in the first minute. So that creativity is what Xron is known for.
It also really messes with your flow.
Yes.
Like if you kind of think you have a grasp on the map and you think you have a grasp on how fast someone can get somewhere, and then just all of a sudden they're nowhere near. But yeah, some great rails there from Xron to open up some damage. Ooh, looks for the final kill shot. It definitely would have killed. No armor there for poor old Bukster. And even now he's licking his wounds a little bit. He's really got to try and get some armor. And that's really what Xron is smelling. He knows he's got to try and get the light, but he's nowhere near. And he can't even risk trying to take that. Looks like he actually tried anyway. Or at the very least went somewhere else. He hasn't got the dire orb in use, so there is always the chance he can get something back. But he's not stacked enough to take a fight. He's still going to be uncomfortable.
No, and Xron's entirely happy with this. Like, he's got absolutely everything. He's got his Ghost Walk up as well. He can fall back onto the vials if he needs to when he uses that. But, oh, Buster has dropped into him. Will he use the Ghost Walk to catch up, though? Doesn't see the opportunity just yet.
Xron happy to just keep this lead as is. He's in a better position to get the heavy. Bukster, I mean, if he wants to try and fight for this, he's just too far away. And
might try and extend the split between the major items this time, because as you see, it's already pretty close. Bukster does manage to pick it up, but he's still going to go down here. But Xron's lightning gun, not clean enough.
And the fact that he ran out of ammo just allows it to not quite go. Super shotgun, just kill him for the love of God. You know, Xron is sitting there like, why won't you die already?
Blowing out his cheeks, realizing that was a lot closer than he needed to be. He does, or should, go and get some of these vials as well, because they are hugely important to the Knicks. See them prioritizing there. The fact that Bukster did pick up now the Mega as well, meaning got a pretty even split on the items.
Some optimization from Xron too, kind of shooting out, is the sentence I tried to get out, the Tri-Bolt at the same time as doubling back for the Hourglasses, just to kind of cover 2 birds with 1 stone in that respect, get some information or damage, and then get some cooldown reduction. Xron's rails have just been this thorn in Bukster's side. Every time Bukster feels like there's a chance to kind of get a rail back or something, he's already taken the damage.
For the first time this map, it is now evening up into a steady tempo. Great rail from Bukster. Xron needs to get away, but he has rocket jumped up. He heard it.
Wonderful
Great play by Bukster. It's one of the strengths of obviously of the Ranger. The rocket jumping, limited damage.
And at the same time, just in case there was the spawn down near Catacombs, he fired the rocket towards the left, if that's where Xron went, and kind of went full speed underneath just in case he went down as well. There was no spawn there, but you kind of just see the little play, like he already has the pattern in his mind. This is that kind of process that these players can go through.
And quite similar now in terms of the storyline of last map, is that Xron has been on the offensive and controlling the map the entire time, but Bukster's managed to keep the scoreline so low.
Oh,
he's read it.
Perfect read! Perfect read. You rarely see someone read Nyx's Ghost Walk on this map when there are so many places she can go.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised that Xron didn't at least look behind him to see what Bukster was doing, because completely unaware. Might have been able to get out, but he still would have been low. Nevertheless, we're back at even score, nearly half the map gone.
Through some great moments from Bukster. It's got to be said that just he's not really cracking in any way. Like there's some insane levels of composure, no matter what. Like no matter how much time is on the clock, how the odds kind of seem a little bit against him at times, he's still going for these like really wonderful plays.
So cocky by Xron to go up the jump pad there, and it's gonna work out for him, but
point blank rail as well.
So cocky.
That was a very Xron way to get a frag, and now he's going to get the spawn trap at the same time. Bukster, no dire orb, so he's kind of stuck here.
To push in. He doubles back. I thought he might have been aggressive. That would have been a very strong thing to do, but again, plays the safer card.
I mean, even if you get one of those really cocky frags, the chance of it working back to back, there's always the chance that you might even like, it is used against you in some ways, because you try and like get that one step too many, before you know it, that's it, you're dead.
Yeah, especially with the rail finish, right? If he hit off a direct rocket, if he hit another one, Nyx died, that would have been rather amusing. Nevertheless.
But it didn't, that's the important thing.
It didn't. But, I Bukster's... I don't know how he's keeping it to 3-2 with the amount that Xron is hitting in terms of rails.
When Bukster has an opportunity, he's rarely squandered it. It's just that that opportunity has presented itself so little because of Xron's just general. His rails have been so good, and that tri-bolt certainly doesn't tickle. Oh dear.
Dear.
Yeah, it's gonna be a while. There's no way he's gonna have to try and like double back.
Yeah,
it's gonna make it's gonna make his retreat a little bit predictable. Xron knew way before he even got that mega, I think, that he was gonna go down towards near light, and he doubles back again, takes him out 2-4. Xron, he's just. I'm not even saying it because it's his nickname in Pro League, but he's had a great handle on the situation, like the whole time.
Yeah, it just feels controlled. It's almost like cold from Xron now. He's got a fast tempo, but he's playing a careful game. And the risks he's taken have been calculated.
The rails have been so on the money. Bukster, nowhere to run. I mean, he's forced to get away. This, by all means, should be another frag, especially from that angle with the SSG. No way the spread is going to do less than necessary in that situation. And it is starting to run away from Bukster a little bit. The rail has been on the money, ZSX. Oh my God, what was that?
Oh man. I feel a little bit sorry now for Bukster because when Xron's racking up the star points like this, you do feel a bit helpless. And this is exactly why we say he could be so damn good. And this is why he takes maps off people like Kilson and Cooler, because he can play. He just does these moves that no one else thinks of, and he has so much flair. But we just want to see it more and more and more. And luckily, we're seeing it this series. But unfortunately, Bukster, Xron is putting out.
I mean, there's that Nyx exclusive jump as well. A nice high up rocket jump, and then just cover the bases there. But this is Xron when he's feeling himself. You know, the second he's feeling it, it's scary, because when he's feeling it, it's actually more because he's a bit more just free flowing. He's a bit more lighthearted, like within himself. Like even that, like he missed a right near the rail. He kind of just laughed to himself because he ran out of rail ammo. And it's like he's playing this crazy way, but he's still not shy of just like laughing to himself, because he's focused. But when Xron is focused, there's also like this really odd element of he's just having fun.
And that's always scary when a player's like that in a setting like this, because as you said, it means they're comfortable. And when a player gets comfortable, that's when the crazy stuff starts to happen.
And another rail. Another rail. I think that's a common... It's going to take a lot for Xron to get taken off this mantle right now. I mean, he's had some of the most impressive rails we've seen all day on the broadcast. He tries to spring a trap, but nowhere to be found just yet. But you fear that the point of no return has already been reached on a map like this. The Ghost Walk's naturally going to waste time.
Yeah, there's no coming back, and it's up. I mean, I think for the last 3 or 4 minutes, I'm sure Bukster would have felt almost helpless, because any corner he goes around, there's a rail to meet him. Even if he does damage, there's the Ghost Walk. Xron is a lot more stacked, so it's such a tough ask, and this is why Nyx is just so powerful.
It's funny how we discussed before the map that Xron would have to be very on the ball with Nyx, like, because the Ghost Walk, if it's used only to save your skin, it can really only do so much. The juggle did so much damage, and it forced Bukster to retreat.
Well, for me, and personally, the Ghost Walk hasn't done anything this game.
But that's why I've been so impressed, because it's pretty much been the double jump.
But this is it on the pro level, and you said it perfectly earlier, is that those mechanics in terms of the double jump, it causes so many situations, if you use it in the right way, that it breaks the traditional thought pattern and flow of a player. Because Bukster got caught off guard so many times, because that's just not how a player. That's not how players should be able to move. They shouldn't normally be in those situations. And then you get someone like Xron, who uses it way more creatively than other players. You can never predict where he's going to be, and those first few moments set the tone for the map. And ever since then, he was able to get into positions much earlier than Bukster was able to expect him or prepare for. And that's why he made his rails look so impressive, because his positioning was always on point, and so his rails were in much easier positions and range.
Yeah, those kind of highlight reel frags were kind of just the cherry on top. He was playing so rock solid before it, and he's in a great position now. He is.
He's really, like, when you're looking on point like that and you're playing so confidently, how are you going to be rocked? I expected Xron to go up 2-0. The first map was a lot closer than I thought it was going to be. This map went as expected. There were some amazing moments by Bukster where he showed his talent and his skill, but ultimately the skill set of the Nyx is just too powerful on a map like this, and it's not the Ghost Walk, is the double jump and how creative you can be with that. And that's why it's more powerful than Doom, because you can't do the double jumps to rail with the nail gun and stuff like that as easily.
And Bukster, nowhere to run. So many of these frags he's caught without the Dire Orb too, which is normally such a solid, and this was the
great,
insane flick. Thank you.
But I mean, as a player, like, there's so many people that look around and be like, well, how do I improve my aim? Like, my aim's really bad. It's like, well, learn how to position. A lot of these rails, yeah, there's some really good flicks in there, but if you look at like over 50-60% of the rails he hit, it's because he was in the right place at the right time and made it look easy.
And it's a calculated pick for Nyx at the same time. Like, we've talked about it in droves already, but it's
61% rail, and I'm sure he used it an incredible amount as well.
Bukster just looked a bit uncomfortable, is one of the words too. Because at the very start, it all came down to like with the 40-second mark right near Rocket, where we had that one tiny little nail jump near Rocket, which I think completely threw off Bukster, just let up a free rail, and it's like he had no clue he was there.
Yep.
It's kind of rare at the start of a Blood Covenant that someone gets caught off guard that extremely, because you normally have a pretty strong grasp of, right, I spawn here, he's probably going to spawn over there, and then
this is what
you've got it handled, right?
Like, and that's it. As a pro player, you played that map thousands of times. This is roughly how the first 30 seconds, minutes going to go. But then suddenly you're getting caught off guard within 30 seconds. It's like 2-3 rails back to back. Like, what just happened? Like,
has he got some spawn I don't know about? Like,
yeah. How did you do that type of thing? And that was a consistent theme that ran throughout the map.
Now, Veil of Nath, I believe. I can see Scale Bearer's shoes.
Yeah,
I think that's
Scale versus
his shoes. Okay, so bit of an odd matchup to have as a final decider. It's the damage versus
potential final decider.
But this is kind of what I'm alluding to, is that Xron, normally you kind of take it one map at a time. He has just looked so strong, especially after that Blood Covenant, that you can't not favor him in this situation. He's just looking so good. If he brings that A game in the first like minute or so here, you kind of almost feel like you know what might happen here.
Well, you can. He's one of the players, when you watch him play, you can tell he thinks about the game on a different level of detail and in a different way. So this is why I'm particularly keen to see what is he going to do with the Scale Bearer, because it's a rather unusual pick. It's not unheard of, but it is a rather unusual pick. So that's what I'm looking forward to seeing out of him. Whereas we know what we're going to get from Keel. And the one thing is, there is still a speed differential between the two. So that's one of the features we might expect Ron to try and abuse a little bit. And already, spamming that nail gun everywhere, you're bound to hit something. Keel is a big champion.
It is kind of the drawback of Keel that he's the only large champion that actually fits the movement bill of what you would expect. The others are they are so fast you wouldn't expect it. But once you understand that and learn it, it's fine. It's just part of it. But Keel is the one that seems to just kind of have the short end of the stick in that regard. The makeup for that is just the spam potential, the crazy damage output.
That's why it works rather well on Veil, because we spoke about at the start, there's lots of these close combat corridors to use the grenades to get good effectiveness, but it's also not an expansive map, so you're not really out of place with that speed disadvantage.
But speed is something we're not seeing a lot of right now. Both players playing this extremely carefully. Jumping back, if he goes in, it's going to be quite, some potential opening damage to be quite risky here. Xron keeping a handle on it just in case. A pretty even split between Heavy and Mega. Looks like Xron's trying to kind of cover both bases.
Oh, ouch.
Ooh, opening damage and then some.
Yeah, slightly unexpected. That was like a proper insta 180 out the teleporter. Don't think I would have expected that either. Bukster now good grapple on the map. However, Ron did walk away with the Mega. That hurts to miss that. Still got all the grenades, which he can use coming through, and Ron is just going to charge in. That's one way to use it.
The moment Xron realized, okay, I'm in the perfect position where the ball rush is used, that's the benefits. It's not necessarily for general mobility and damage reduction that you would see on some of the larger maps. On Veil, it's, oh, cool, you're in the wrong position. I'm going to run into you now.
What's he doing? And that's it, right? As soon as Bukster missed the rail, Xron charged in. And we saw he doesn't pick up the... This is chaos.
Yeah, I mean, clearly the play was, I think if I just beat him to it, he would have got another easy frag. It's just half a second too slow on that one, and he paid for it. This is some of the stuff that can happen from Xron, where there's a play that you totally understand, but it's a very confident play. Doesn't quite work the way it should. Oh, hang on a minute. Getting in, but nothing quite. I mean, 2-2, this has been a bit more of a weird back and forth than I expected. but in the nature of these two champions, where they're going to just kind of swing because they have so much stack to make up for. And now
full
Bukster,
rocket.
delicious.
Ron needs to get out of there.
He's still kind of sticking around, overstaying is welcome, but he does hit the damage on Bukster.
Well, Bukster doesn't have the rail, and Ron knows that, so that's the one key piece of information he's using to his advantage at the moment. And he can try to isolate that area to try and prevent it altogether. Good grenade. Ensuring Xron needs to back off. Neither player has a real grapple on the map at the moment.
It's a tricky position for Bukster because you know you need a rail, but with the heavy that has just spawned, you kind of wanted to not necessarily give it up for free so early. Xron getting stuck on the terrain a little bit. This should be a frag, but some bonus rocket damage that actually looks like a direct from Xron means that Bukster's in danger of being refragged. Yeah, if he went around the other corner, we actually might potentially have seen something there, but Xron going straight in for a rail.
Still doesn't have the rail though for the kill. So Bukster, he will get it now if he backs off, but he doesn't. He decides to push off to try and secure the Mega. At least doing some damage on the heavy. He moves off too early. He's going to take a lot of damage here. If he gets it at all, and he doesn't, he will be able to move in now because he knows Keel has backed off, but he's taken too much damage.
That's been a common problem for Bukster. Pushed into a bad position. Nowhere to run in Rocket Room.
For me, he needs to try and get that rail earlier. There was a couple of opportunities where I understand why he didn't, but we've seen that Xron is now abusing the fact he hasn't got it.
Oh, the change to the shotgun. Xron almost had the perfect three-piece combo, but Bukster answered back.
He would have died as well. That was an easy rail for Xron, so just in time.
Yes, that's why he set it up, man. So the benefit of the bull rush is just the knock-up. It's one of the harder rails to miss, I think, especially on a map like this, where you're pretty close range on a large boy like Keel.
For sure.
And look at the stack, both sides.
They're big, juicy boys now. Trading rails again.
Ooh, Bukster barely railable at this health, and Xron, he's going to know. He can do the maths.
That's your signal to leave, but he's in a lot of trouble. And I wouldn't be surprised if Xron tries to push in here. He should roughly know where he is, and he has heard him. Great rail.
Perfect.
All series, these rails have been on point.
And when Xron's rails are fantastic, it really looks like some of the top of the pyramid style of rails, like just up there with the best of them, really. It's just, we talk about that consistency or lack of sometimes. Don't want to jinx it, but it kind of just looks like Xron is bringing that edge. Bukster weak.
So we can see what Xron is trying to do is play much more of a rail game and use that speed to get in high ground a lot earlier than Bukster. And he has been controlling and patrolling the map more effectively. The grenades haven't been particularly useful. There's been a few times where he's managed to catch Xron off guard, but overall it's just been heavy stack on heavy stack, and Bukster's generally losing the rail game, which has been key, but at least he's got a rail now.
Yeah, that was a good couple of minutes
now,
earlier on.
He's got a good grapple of this map now. 15 seconds or so between the major items. I don't even know if Bukster realizes when the Mega was gone.
Does look so much though like Xron didn't have a complete grasp of where Bukster was, but hasn't made a huge difference. They've both kind of just been running rings around each other, almost accidentally at this stage.
Bukster's slowed the pace down completely because he doesn't know when the major items are. He hasn't really got a good idea of what Xron is doing.
It just feels like Xron is the one that knows where everything is and when it spawns because he's in control. Bukster looking a little bit cautious and a bit uncomfortable, potentially.
Very uncomfortable because he doesn't know when the major items are. Xron's doing a great job of chasing him, so he can't set up in any position. So Xron's using the time in between to make sure the Bukster's nowhere to be seen.
Some pretty good damage from the grenades, but not enough. Xron has built way too much of a stack up, and the combo! Confidence coming out again. The point-blank rail into the charge, because the charge was coming out regardless, but if the rail missed, not so much of a favorable position.
Xron missing rails, don't be silly. Not in this series.
Not today. I don't want to. I don't want to point out purely because I don't want to jinx it. I don't want to commentators curse his rails, but genuinely, just they've been on fire. They've been something else. Gets caught on the Mega though. Bukster able to tie things up.
Well, that's one of the huge benefits we haven't spoke about in enough detail is that stack. Like starting stack, picked up one light armor, picked up a lightning gun, and you're ready to fight. So, still always need to be on your guard. And that's what Xron did. He let his guard down a little bit. He missed the rail just as we were speaking about how amazing it was. And
I said I didn't want to curse it.
Exactly. And Bukster just capitalized on it.
And he's brought himself back into the fight.
Should be able to get a frag here, but he's got
the bull rush.
Rocket.
He just saves it for the perfect moment. Xron, he just does the opening damage first. He's confident. He knows how much the bull rush will do at that range anyway. And that's all she wrote in that. And I love
Oh,
watching
no!
him play. Uh-oh. That, yeah, has no choice but to laugh at that one, I think.
Oh boy.
Then it's the acceptance. The initial laugh of the hilarity of it, and then acceptance of, oh, hang on a minute. He's back in the map.
And we are on Bukster's view here rather than Xron, and Bukster is living life dangerously. 2 minutes to go, one frag might be all she wrote, because if you can get that frag cleanly, you can really control that high ground and make it very difficult for your opponents.
Xron, lots of armor, bull rush, locked and loaded, ready to go. Bukster, again, no rail. And it has been a common problem from throughout this map that Xron's kind of just been bullying his way around the map. You just don't want to get caught in the wrong position here. He's going to chase it down. Bull rush! Oh! Into the pillar!
Oh.
That may as well have done environment damage. He hit it so hard.
I think it did. He definitely hit his head on that pillar. Look at these rails. Like, he's not even aiming. It's just mental.
It's the form. We've been talking about Xron and how he can really bring his true form when he wants to, but confidence levels have always been his worst enemy. It just does not seem like that today. You'd never have believed it.
For the scale bearer, you should always prioritize that mega. It's going to give you slightly more of an advantage.
I mean, a scale bearer mid bull rush when he's got full stack is literally unkillable. There's really nothing you can do. And Xron positioning himself really well here. He just has to play his cards right at this stage. Bull rush probably going to be the last one we see of this map, if we even see it used at all.
Yeah, purely again out of jail free card at the moment.
Oh, now. Oh, right now. Misses the rail, but Bukster, the problem is he's weak. There's only 30 seconds on the clock. What's he going to do to restack back up in this time?
Get away from the void. You can see Xron's positioning. He knows he's got the stack advantage. He just needs to stand in a corridor where there's just a choke point. So if Bukster pushes in, he's going to die. 2 exits here, it's a choke point.
Bukster has to bank on a miracle.
What a
here,
rail.
especially with the damage that Xron is dishing out. Doesn't even really need to super over push. Misses the rail again, but there's so much of a stack difference. Dare I say, it doesn't matter. Xron playing magnificently, and in a fitting way, the rail's the final weapon to seal the final frag. And that's all she wrote, ZSX. Well done. Confidence
at its finest. I mean, we spoke at the very start about what Xron is going to turn up, and well, it's a Xron who's enjoying himself. Like, he looked like he was having fun. It was in control, it was smooth, it was calm, the aim was on point, there was really exciting creative strategy. That's the Xron we saw in 2017 that we began to hype.
We are covering, I mean, look, right now we're covering these relegation matches, but this is where the tournament begins. Xron is now, moving into where the rest of the bracket is lying. There are loads of matches going on. Obviously, there is a secondary stream that you lovely folks at home can tune into while this one's live. Have them both open. If Xron plays that well in the rest of this bracket, he could go really far this week.
Yeah, if I'm in the tournament now, he might not have been a player I was ever looking at, but I certainly am. Like, that's a player where you say, okay, you've got what it has, well, you got what it takes, right, to go right, as you say, right all the way.
What I feel like is quite crazy as well is obviously when we were looking over the veto, all of us thought that Awoken was going to be very dominant. Instead, it felt like actually it was quite flat from Xron. It took him some time to really get into it, become Blood Run. We hit the 5-minute mark and something just clicked. He started playing loose, he was playing a lot more aggressive. Yeah. It seemed like the confidence finally just came into him.
I mean, yeah, the first map, you're right, it was calculated. I think it was that initial land jitter nerves. There was periods where he didn't want to overcommit. Like, he was playing solid, right? He was timing well, the items were good split. Strategically it was sound, but he was just playing reserved.
Yeah.
And as soon as he got onto Blood Covenant on the Knicks, like home ground, home champion, we saw his creativity come to shine. And then when that got flowing, he was hitting his rails, he found his groove, and it felt like there was no way back in for Bukster.
I think it's definitely worth pointing out, though, that with the exception of maybe the final map, which kind of just looked a bit more of a struggle, Bukster did do a fantastic job of being able to kind of make a mountain out of a molehill. There were a lot of situations where Xron kind of just looked like he was the one that was bullying a lot of the map, even on something like Blood Covenant, where once we hit that halfway point and it just started to escape him, that was a different story. But when the map began, Bukster, he very rarely had an opening or an opportunity, but when he did, he grabbed it with both hands and made it closer than you would have expected.
And this is why it's a credit to both, right? Where throughout the entire story of this series, it always felt like Xron had it in the bag. but then you actually look, particularly on the first two maps, the first map at least, and the last map, it was incredibly close for a lot of it.
Yeah.
Like, Xron was in control for the first 3-4 minutes, but it was 2-0. So that's a full credit to Bukster for not letting it run away, but at the same time, he was never able to impose himself. So we never felt that Bukster had a grapple on the map.
No, yeah, it did feel like it was actually incredibly close for a lot of it. Even, as we said, going into Blood afterwards, that first 5 minutes, it could have gone either way. It was so tight and a lot of decisions that were made, but it always felt like Xron was being a bit more flamboyant. We saw the nail jumps, the movement that he displayed there, I think kind of set him up a little bit to play more loose, and that was just when he went, you know what, I'm going for it.
I think it comes back to our initial points where those picks just felt they were just more favoured to Xron. And so Bukster was always playing from a deficit in that aspect. Yes, he loves the Ranger, but we saw the power of the Nyx's moving capabilities. It set the tone for the map. Bukster had to always be reacting to the Nyx rather than taking control of the map. And so when you're in that kind of situation, how are you ever meant to really take a good lead?
I suppose the problem is when you're in a position like that where you're playing from the back foot, it's the fact you play more to not lose rather than to play to win, right?
Exactly. So you did it perfectly, Jackie.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you,
rolls,
Dan.
right?
We can rotate.
But I mean, ultimately, we look at replays like these, and one of the things you see as a key is just perfect use of the aggressive ball rush. That it can obviously, I think sometimes the ball rush can come across as a bit of like a forbidden fruit, where you just want to do it all the time if you're close, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the right time. Xron finds the right time every time, and it's why he's one of the best scale bearer players in the world right now.
That's the thing, right? You've got to invest in a massive red blanket to try and just wave him off. Yeah.
No, to Ryan's point, to be fair to him, and that's what we said about Xron. He's like, he thinks about the game on a slightly different way, and it shines through on the Nyx. And he's one of the few people, if someone like that uses the Ghost Walk offensively nearly all the time, he can. Most other people will always leave that as a get out of jail free card. And Xron does use it for that. But if there's an opportunity to use it aggressively, he will generally do it. And so his way of thinking is, how do I maximize the asset I have, rather than just how do I control the map and win the game. It's just a slightly different way of thinking about the game.
Yeah, I mean, it did look like over the course of this entire series, it's probably the most we've actually seen full use of the actives. Every time they were off cooldown, Xron was basically popping it if it was in a correct position, which it seemed like a good way to do it. It was nicely utilized. Obviously, the ball rush did give him a couple of cheeky moments that could have swung each way.
Xron is one of the players that, if anyone that's been watching Quake Champions since like day one, the Quake World Championship days, Xron was always one of the kind of like the first players that was quite innovative with how he approached. He played Quake Champions as a new experience, right? Quake Champions, he looked into the champion aspect of the game earlier than a lot of people did,
and that's why. A learning transition. A lot of these players come from a game where it obviously we didn't have champions, there wasn't abilities, and a lot of these players still base their game off not having them, like they're luxuries. Whereas there's some players, particularly the newer to the scene, that obviously have developed their skill set around how to do it. Like, how do I build my game around this champion on this map?
Well, what else has been a luxury is covering these matchups that we've had so far. But there's still more to come. Of course, we close out our third game, but we'll be back in with the fourth after the break. Do not go anywhere. You will not want